Welcome, we're learning Halachot Chol Hamoed. But this time more the perspective of Chol Hamoed. Yesterday we learned about the Halachot, what's permitted, what's not. Today we'll touch on that also. But first the perspective on Chol Hamoed. So Chol Hamoed is called Mikrae Kodesh, just like Ol Yamim Tovim, are called Mikrae Kodesh. This is how the Pasuk says in the Torah. In few places that the Lashon, Vayom Rishon Mikra Kodesh, Uvayom Shvi Mikra Kodesh. This is talking about the first and seventh day, which are Yamim Tovim. But Chol Hamoed was called Mikra Kodesh as well. What does it mean when it says Mikra Kodesh? Rashi says, Kacheu Beksut Nekiya, B'machal Uvemishte. This is also how the Ramban learns. This is also learned in the Mechilta in many places. Which means you have an inyan on Yom Tov, as we're seeing over here, which is extended also to Chol Hamoed, to be Mekadesh, because Chol Hamoed is also called Mikra Kodesh, and therefore we have a din to be Mekadesh the day with Ma'achal, Mishteh. I'll read you the Rashi inside. Kra oto Kodesh la'achila v'shtiya v'ksut, which means one should be reading in it Mikrae Kodesh, the words of the Torah that deal with the Chag. Secondly, Ksut, a person should wear different clothing than his weekday clothing, and it needs to be Ksut Nekiyah, clean clothing. Thirdly, Ma'achal u'mishteh. There's a din to have different meals than you eat on a regular weekday. On a regular weekday, you would eat pizza, you would eat a bagel with cream cheese. On Yom Tov, there's a din to eat meat and drink wine. Let's see where's Chol Hamoed goes in between. So there's a lot of things here that we need to touch upon. But before we do that, I'd like to just take you to the psukim that teach us the dinim of not to do melacha just like a weekday. Chol Hamoed is not like a weekday. It's also not like Yom Tov. On Yom Tov, you have restriction of doing any melacha which is not ochel nefesh. On Chol Hamoed, it's more lenient, but there's a machloket rishonim whether it's isur deoraita to do melacha altogether on Chol Hamoed, except few things. Davar havet for sure is permitted. We explained that most rishonim hold that Chol Hamoed is the isur melacha on Chol Hamoed is derabanan, and Chachamim restricted few things. But even those that hold that Chol Hamoed melachot ad deoraita, the way the Rishonim explain, the Ritva and other Rishonim explain that Masro HaKatuv leChachamim, the Torah gave Chachamim, our sages, the right to structure Chol Hamoed, which is permitted and which is not. Where do you learn that from? So it's very hard to find in a psukim, because the psukim don't really say that Chol Hamoed is not permitted in Melacha, and that you have to treat it just in somewhat like Yom Tov. The Gemara in Chagiga Yudchet brings different psukim and learns it from different psukim. Tanu Rabbanan, says the Gemara, where do you know that Isur B'asiyat Melacha Mina Hani Mili? The Tanu Rabbanan. Et Chag HaMatzot Tishmor Shivat Yamim. You have to watch Chag HaMatzot for 7 days. Now, simple meaning of the psukim means you have to make sure that on Chag HaMatzot, your matzah should stay kosher for Pesach. But Chachamim lo over here limed al cholo shel moed she'asur be'asiyat melacha. One is not allowed to do melacha on Chol Hamoed as well. For 7 days, one is not allowed to do melacha. Divrei Rabbi Yoshia. Rabbi Yonatan Omer, he says you don't need a pasuk altogether. You don't need to learn that from the pasuk, because the pasuk means for the simple understanding as we explained before. Where do you learn Isur melacha from? He says, אינו צריך, קל וחומר, מה ראשון ושביעי שאין קדושה לפניהם ולאחריהם אסור בעשיית מלאכה, חולו של מועד שיש קדושה לפניהם ולאחריהם אינו דין שאסור בעשיית מלאכה, which means, you see the first day of Sukkot or Pesach and the 7th day of Sukkot and Pesach are asur in asiyat melacha, even though before the first day and after the 7th day it's mutar בעשיית מלאכה. And still the Torah said first day and 7th days are asur. So Chol Hamoed that is wrapped with the first day and the 7th day definitely should have kedusha, because before and after is asur melacha, therefore it should be asur in melacha. And the Gemara is mepalpel that whether it stands la'alacha or not. Then the Gemara brings other ways to learn. Kol melechet avodah lo tasu, limed al cholo shel moed she'asur b'asiyat melacha, divrei Rabbi Yossi Haglili, and Rabbi Akiva learns it from a different way. But whatever it is, we'll learn over here psukim. Now the Rishonim learn, the Rishonim argue whether those psukim are meikar adin, and therefore it's asur b'melacha mideoraita, with the leniencies that the Torah gave Chachamim the right to be lenient, or it's only an asmachta, which means it's all the Rabbanan, those psukim are just a hint, but not more than that. Now, the Isur Melacha, don't get me wrong, it's extremely strict and severe on Chol HaMoed. One should not take Chol HaMoed lightly at all, as Chachamim warn us about those times very much, and they say that Amevazeh et HaMoadot ki'ilu oved avodat kochavim umazalot. A person that's mevazeh, belittles the Moadot, Chol HaMoed. In what way? Rashi says that oseh ba'en melacha. If one goes to work, opens his business on Chol HaMoed, in a way that is not permitted, there are ways that you are permitted. There's some times that Chachamim allowed us to do melacha on Chol HaMoed, to open your business. And we spoke about that yesterday. Maybe we'll touch upon that today as well if we have time. But this is how strict it is. One that does melacha on Chol HaMoed is ke'ilu oved avodat kochavim umazalot. Very, very severe. Moreover, Chachamim tell us, it's Mishnah in Avot, that elu she'en lahem chelek la'olam haba, hamevazeh et hamoadot. Again, the Bartanura writes that he does melacha on Chol HaMoed. This is how a person is mevazeh et hamoadot. One should take that very seriously and very strictly. It's not something that one can just take lightly. And the Gemara Yerushalmi, Perek Bet, B'Moed Katan, Halacha Gimel says, Amar Rabbi Ba Bar Malal, Ilu haya mi sheyimanei mi. If I had somebody, if I had other rabbis that would gather together with me to restrict, Hitarti shiyu usim melacha b'cholo shel moed. I would allow completely for a person to go to do work on Chol HaMoed. Go open your job, go open your business, do melacha, go work like a weekday. Why? So severe, so much, severe in a way, but he's very lenient. Like, let go of everything. How could you let go of everything? Says the rabbi, Klum asru la'asot melacha b'chol shel moed ela kedei shiyu ochlim v'shotim v'geim b'Torah. The reason we have Chol HaMoed is in order for a person to eat, drink, rejoice for the honor of Chol HaMoed, for the honor of Hashem, and learn Torah. What do they do today? Ve'inu nochlim v'shatin u'pachzin. Instead of that, they drink, they eat, and they party. When you drink and eat, sometimes you misunderstand what the purpose of the day is. The purpose of the day is to rejoice with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Part of the rejoicing with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or the main way to rejoice with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is by learning Torah. So Hashem says, look, it's a Yom Tov. Eat, drink, come and learn with me. Come and rejoice with me. Come and bound with me. But instead of that, people they eat and drink, and they go to party. And they have, which some things are fine, but in perspective, you go all day, have fun in the circus, and you go to a Luna Park, and you come back, you have another party. Hello, the day is not meant just to take, it's good thing to take your kids and let them out a little bit to feel the happiness of the day. But together with that, a person needs to know the perspective. You have a time that you have to sit down and learn a little bit and understand that that's the essence of the day. In reality, the most important thing should have been that a person should put mainly his time on learning. Okay, that's just to give an overview of how strict Chol HaMoed is. Now, Chol HaMoed is somewhere in between Yom Tov and Chol HaMoed and Yom Chol. It's not as severe, it's not as strict as Yom Tov, almost in anything. And on the other hand, one can't be treating the day as a regular weekday. And this is something that we can find and learn from many places. as the Sha'ar HaTziyun in the beginning of Hilchot Chol HaMoed in Siman Tav Kuf Lamed says, in Sha'ar HaTziyun Gimel, he says that although in the Tanya, the Magen Avraham brings the Tanya, and in the Tanya it says over there that one should treat Chol HaMoed just like Yom Tov. Just like Yom Tov. Why? Because we found that Yom Tov is called Mikra Kodesh, and Chol HaMoed is called Mikra Kodesh. So therefore, one should think that what it says in the Halacha, Chayav lechabed Chol HaMoed b'machal u'mishteh u'ksut nekiah, as we learned before, v'shelo yinhag behem minhag chol, as we learned before from the words Mikra Kodesh. This is how the Rishonim explained it. So it should be as Yom Tov. That's what the Tanya says. Just like Yom Tov. Kish'ar Yom Tov. But the Sha'ar HaTziyun, the Mishnah Berurah says no. It's not as Yom Tov, and therefore he eliminates those words when he wrote the Halacha. One should treat it with respect and honor, but not as much as Yom Tov. And he proves that from many places. For example, he says that when you see the Rambam calls Chol HaMoed Mikra Kodesh, and also Yom Tov Mikra Kodesh. But in Mikra Kodesh that we learn Ksut and Levush and Achila V'Shtiyah, does it extend also to Kibud Ve'oneg? There's a din of Kvod Yom Tov and Oneg Yom Tov, just like we found in Shabbat. We learn in the Pasuk in Yeshaya that you have to be Mechabed Shabbat and Me'aneg Shabbat. These are two mitzvot midivrei sofrim. They're very strict. They're not the Rabbanan. They're midivrei sofrim. It's much higher level than the Rabbanan. It's almost like a deoraita. So therefore, one has to honor, when we're dealing with Shabbat, the difference between oneg and kavod is what you do before and what you do on Shabbat. Kavod is usually, most of the things of kavod is preparing for Shabbat. For example, you prepare yourself, ksut nekiyah, ksut shel Shabbat, clothing of Shabbat. Those are things that you prepare beforehand. You prepare the table. You prepare that beforehand. You prepare the food and many other things. You clean the house. Those are all kvod Shabbat. Shabbat is called Shabbat Malketa. It's like the queen coming to the house. So when the queen comes to visit in your house, you make sure that it's honorable. All those things you prepare beforehand. Oneg is something you practice already on Shabbat. Eating, drinking good food, drinking good drinks, sleeping on Shabbat, and whatever a person feels, the oneg, enjoyment of Shabbat. So kavod is to honor the Shabbat, and oneg is to enjoy the Shabbat, to have that enjoyment. Now, when we're dealing with Yom Tov, it's the same thing. We have din of kavod, ve'oneg Yom Tov. That's what the Rambam learns from the words Mikra Kodesh. But when he deals with Chol HaMoed, he eliminates kavod ve'oneg, which means there's no din of kavod and oneg on Chol HaMoed. It's not like Shabbat, and it's not also called Yom Tov. Chol HaMoed is not called Yom Tov. This is halacha in Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch says the following. He says in Siman Taf Tzadik the following words. נוהגים שביום טוב אומר את יום טוב מקרא קודש הזה, when you pray 18, you say יום טוב מקרא קודש הזה. But when it's חול המועד, חולו של מועד אומר את יום מקרא קודש. They're both called מקרא קודש, as we explained before, but one is called יום טוב מקרא קודש, and on חול המועד it's יום מקרא קודש. It's not יום טוב מקרא קודש. Mishnah Berurah brings the Magen Avraham. It says, Shema mina, dechol hamoed lo mikre Yom Tov. Chol hamoed is not Yom Tov. Not everybody agrees with that. If you take a look, there's a Rashba in Sukkot, there's a Ritva, there's Rishonim that learn that Chol hamoed is also called Yom Tov. But from here, says the Magen Avraham, Chol hamoed lo mikre Yom Tov. And that's why bechol hamoed also, you don't say, on Birkat HaMazon, Arachamanu Yanchilenu Yom Shekulo Tov, as you say on Yom Tov. Says the Mishnah Berurah. Yes, you don't say. You don't mention on Chol HaMoed any place that is called Yom Tov. Therefore, says the Mishnah Berurah, from the Magen Avraham, the Chol HaMoed lo mikre Yom Tov. Because of that, there's differences between the two, says the Sha'ar HaTziyun in Tav Kuf Lamed. He says that Kavod ve'oneg doesn't apply on Chol HaMoed, it applies on Yom Tov. Therefore, the Rambam says that only for Yom Tov and not Chol HaMoed. On Chol HaMoed, you have a din of Simcha. Simcha is a separate thing. There's a big discussion in the Poskim. Hamoed has a tshuva in Yabi Omer, and long discussion in the Poskim whether Shabbat you have a din of Simcha. Simcha is a different din than Oneg and Kavod. We explained already what Kavod and Oneg. Oneg is to me me'aneg the body, to pleasure the body. Good food, good drinks, go to sleep, whatever a person feels. Oneg. Simcha is not so. Simcha is an inner feeling. Oneg is pleasuring the body, the flesh. Simcha is the inner feeling of Simcha. So how do you reach Simcha? So it's interesting. Normally a person, I would say, a person should reach Simcha from working on himself. Because since it's an inner thing, you should be able to reach Simcha only independently by yourself. But Chachamim tell us in Ilchot Yom Tov how to reach Simcha, and it's very, very famous. The halacha in Ilchot Yom Tov, Siman Tavkuf Kaftet, where it speaks about the Dinei Simchat Yom Tov, it says over there, Chayav Adam liot sameach v'tov lev b'moed. A person must be happy on the Moed. That's talking about Yom Tov, by the way. Same thing would apply to Chol HaMoed, because Simcha is also for Chol HaMoed. So therefore, how do you reach Simcha on Chol HaMoed or on Yom Tov? It says over here, Likvoa kol seuda al hayayin. You have to do the seuda al hayayin. You have to drink wine. Wine, some say that it needs to be revi'it. It definitely should be yain that's meshaker, which means it has some alcohol, even a little bit of alcohol. Unless a person can drink alcohol, then definitely shouldn't. But if a person could, he needs to drink alcoholic wine, and he needs to drink a shiur of at least revi'it. So it says here, likvoa kol seuda al hayayin. There's a question whether you have to have meat on Yom Tov, because you all know the Chazal said that en simcha ela bebasar ve'yain. But the question is, why the Shulchan Aruch doesn't bring anything about basar? There's no din basar. There's no din in Shulchan Aruch that you have to eat meat. It says wine. That's how you reach simcha. Doesn't say a word about meat. Why not? In the Bet Yosef he explains, because the Gemara itself already said that we don't have a halacha to eat meat in our time. Why? Because the meat was a din in the time when there were shelamim in Bet HaMikdash. The Gemara in Pesachim Kuftet says, עכשיו שאין בית המקדש קיים, אין שמחה אלא ביין, שנאמר ויין ישמח לבב אנוש. When Bet HaMikdash will be קיים, people will bring korban shelamim and have to eat that. To simcha, korban simcha would be what would be the obligated to eat for the din of simcha, and simcha ela bebasar ve'yain. Says the Gemara, עכשיו שאין בית המקדש קיים, so you don't bring the korban shlamim, אין simcha ela be'yain, שנאמר ויין ישמח לבב אנוש. It's interesting that the Lashon of the Yam Shel Shlomo, he says, עכשיו שאין לנו שמחת שלמים, we don't have korban shlamim, korban simcha. והמקדש חרב, וערבה כל שמחה. We don't have בית המקדש, we're not happy. אין שמחה אלא ביין, וזולתה אינו יוצא ידי חובה בשמחת יום טוב. The simcha must be only with wine. With that wine, you're not considered fulfilling the mitzvah of simcha. ואדרבה, במה ישמח את עצמו, אם לא שישתה וישכח רישו לשמח ולפתוח בהשם. So interesting. A person says the Yam Shel Shlomo today is unhappy. This is the way we should feel. We should feel, there's a din, you have to understand what he says over here. Of course a person must be happy in his life. He must be happy, the mitzvah, להיות בשמחה תמיד, there's no question about it. But on the same time, a token of sadness must be for every person. Why? Because בית המקדש חרב, וערבה כל שמחה. You have to realize people do tikkun chatzot. You sit down on the floor, you cry every night. Why? The Kadosh Baruch Hu is crying every day, all the time, because of his gala me'artzo, gala me'beto. So of course a person needs to feel that. On the same time, he needs to feel also happy. So it's like a person have to be able to switch that feeling from the moment he does, let's say Tikkun Chatzot, to let's say go into praying Shacharit. Praying Shacharit needs to be done with Simcha. You do Psukei de Zimra, which gets you in the feeling and so on. But over here, the Yam Shlomo says that when you drink wine, you forget all the sadness that you have. That is the purpose of drinking wine. He's going to forget all his sorrows, all his poverty, all his bad things. So when a person drinks, he takes away those feelings, as it says, Yain yesamach levav enosh. Nu yain lemare levav. Which means, you know that lo alenu velo alechem, Avel drinks wine. When a person is onen lo alenu velo alechem, he doesn't drink. No, onen doesn't drink wine, doesn't eat meat. But pass away. As long as the dead was not buried, it's called the onen. Once he's buried, it's called the avel. He drinks wine. He eats meat because the wine makes him forget. I saw it very interesting in Rav Yaakov Hillel Shlita in the Sefer Vayashav Vayam. You know, I'm writing now. I'm almost towards the end of writing a Sefer on Ilchot, going to vacations, going to hotels, going to B&B, going there's so many hundreds of halachot that come about when you go to such places. One of the halachot is Kenei Avel lo alenu. Go to hotel, refresh. Can you go? He says over there that he could go and he should go. Why? Because he says, first of all, he brings proofs from the halacha, and then in an aspect of hashkafa, he writes that especially a person that went through such pain, a person goes to a certain tragedy. You know, it has a strong, deep effect on him, and therefore he needs to air out. It's healthy for him to air out, and therefore he says it's fine. So this is the same, on the same token, same idea. But when we come back to our question, where's Chol HaMoed stands? Is it strict as Yom Tov, or it's lenient as Yom Chol? We said over here it's somewhere in the middle. That's how Sha'ar HaTziyun in Mishnah Berurah in Siman Taf Kuf Lamed says. He says that it's not as strict as Yom Tov, but it is somewhere in between. מכל מקום, כיוון שלעניין מלאכה מותר מן התורה בחול המועד, על כל פנים בדבר אבן מותר לכולי עלמא, הרי אין קדושתו חמור כמו יום טוב. The קדושה of חול המועד is not to the level of Yom Tov. Remember that, it's a very interesting thing, and therefore he says, for the dinim of kibud, אין לדמותו ליום טוב. Although you have to do some honor for חול המועד, as we learned in the halacha, that one needs to, we explained before, he needs to lechabed chol hamoed b'ma'achal mishteh v'ksut nekiya, which is dinim of kibud chol hamoed. And we said there's no din of kavod, there's a din of simcha, but it means that it's not to the level of Yom Tov and Shabbat. זה נראה דעת הרמב"ם, ומה דמשמע מחילתא זה צריך, as we explain right now, באכילה, שתייה וכסות נקייה. That was the question we just addressed. The Rambam says, you don't need. And it says over here that you do in the Mechilta. יש לומר, דהיינו לכבדו יותר מימות חול בכל זה. Which means, it's somewhere in the middle. You have to treat it much nicer than Yom Chol. Otherwise, it's מבזה את המועדות. You wear your sneakers and your jeans and you go to work and you eat a bagel with cream cheese in the morning, and in the night you take pizza. That's not the way you treat Chol HaMoed. זהו נראה דעת הרמב"ם. אבל אינו מחויב לדמותו לגמרי בזה ליום טוב, דמקרא קודש שלו, ילפינן in the גמרות we saw in חגיגה, לך דנה דאסור איסור מלאכה בחול המועד, ואפילו אחי מקילינן בדבר עבד. דמקרא קודש שלו, קיל ממקרא קודש ליום טוב, which means although the Torah says the same words, מקרא קודש by חול המועד and יום טוב, as the Rambam brings both, but you need to know that it means totally different Mikra Kodesh. Mikra Kodesh of Yom Tov is more strict than Mikra Kodesh of Chol HaMoed. And then he brings another proof. ותדע עוד, שהרי לעניין אכילה ביום טוב מחויב לאכול פת דווקא. On Yom Tov you must eat pat. And therefore, for instance, if a person forgot יעלה ויבוא on Yom Tov, the din is that he has to repeat the Birkat Hamazon. Why? Because whenever you are obligated to eat bread, if you forget Ya'aleh V'Yavo, or you forget, for instance, on Shabbat, Retzeva Chalitzenu, since you are obligated to eat bread on the first two Seudot, the Shulchan Aruch writes that Shnei Seudot Elo eno yotze lo bepat, eno yotze ela bepat, which means you have to eat bread on the first Seudah and second Seudah. If you didn't say Retzeva Chalitzenu, you're not Yotzei, you have to repeat. Seudah Shlishit is more lenient because you don't have to eat bread on Seudah Shlishit. It's a good thing, but you don't have to. If a person didn't eat and he ate other things instead, he's Yotzei. And therefore, Ya'aleh V'Yavo also, or Tzeva Chalitzenu on Seudah Shlishit on Shabbat, he wouldn't repeat. So over here, on Yom Tov, you are obligated to eat bread. B'chol HaMoed eno mechuyav lechol pat. Although one is not obligated to eat, we said pat. You don't have to eat meat, but it's a davar chashuv to eat meat. This is how the Magen Avraham writes. Even the Bet Yosef some medayek from the Bet Yosef that one should eat, not meat. I'm talking about bread. One should eat bread. So there is a din that although you don't have to eat bread, en chova, but it is davar chashuv. It is something that one should try to do. This is how Magen Avraham brings down in the beginning of Siman Tavkuf Lamed. And it's different on Yom Tov, that over there you have to be mechabed the day. This is how also the Rabbi Akiva Eiger brings down over there in the Hashmatot. Okay, so we were dealing with going back to eating meat. We said that the Bet Yosef writes that there's no din of eating meat on Yom Tov, definitely not on Chol HaMoed. There's no obligation. Why? Because meat was only when Bet HaMikdash existed. So people brought Korban Shlamim. But today, you don't have Bet HaMikdash, you don't have Korban Shlamim. The meat is not something that you must have in order to have the Simcha. But you do have to have wine. Yain is something that brings Simcha, not meat. Others want to learn a little bit differently. I'm sure Shlomo explains. Bach also explains. They want to learn like this. Interesting. They say that what the Gemara brought down, that you don't have to eat meat. It was the Lashon. The Gemara didn't speak a word about meat. It just said, "Achshav she'en bet hamikdash kayam, en simcha ela beyain." Didn't speak about meat, but you understand from that there's no din of eating meat at all. But the Yam Shel Shlomo says that no, that's not what it means. It means over there, of course. By the way, the Rambam brings down to eat meat on Yom Tov. Rambam says the simcha is Bet Yosef goes in length to ask and to try to work it out. What do you mean? The Gemara says you don't have to eat meat, only wine. Where do you know that you have to bring meat? Where'd you get this idea? So, Yam Shel Shlomo, the Marshal, was one of the giant poskim. He says that what it means over here is not that you don't have to eat meat. Chachamim didn't say you don't have meat to eat meat. The Chachamim just said that at the time that Bet HaMikdash existed, you drank wine and you ate meat of basar shelamim. Now, basar shelamim, he says that was a great simcha. You know why was it a great simcha? Because בזמן שהיו בית המקדש היה קיים, people used to stand, היו עומדים על קורבניהם, which means you would go to בית המקדש. There was a mitzvah, going up to the רגל, 3 רגלים. Each person had to go to בית המקדש on the רגלים. לא יראו פניי ריקם. When you go there, you bring the korbanot, korban chagiga, korban shlamim. So you bring that meat on the Mizbeach. How much happiness, how much rejoicing when you eat such a meat that was brought. It becomes kadosh, it becomes something that you brought to the Mizbeach. Say Chazal that today that there's no Bet HaMikdash, עכשיו שאין Bet HaMikdash קיים, אין שמחה אלא ביין, which means at the time that Bet HaMikdash existed, you had the simcha only from the meat. You could have drank wine, you could have drank water, and you still had the simcha. Today that there's no Bet HaMikdash, you have to eat meat, but since it's a regular meat, you have to add to that also wine to come to simcha. It's not something special. It's not meat that went on the mizbeach, and therefore it's regular meat. Regular meat is not sufficient to bring you to simcha. You need to have that with that wine. So therefore, when it says over here that עכשיו שאין בית המקדש קיים אין שמחה אלא ביין, means that together with the meat and the wine you can reach simcha, but not that you don't have to eat meat at all. This is how the Am Shlomo wants to learn. Other learns this differently, to work this thing, to work the Rambam. But regardless, the Shulchan Aruch clearly eliminates wine. Those that eat meat, כמה זמן יש לנו? מתי? מה עכשיו? מה עכשיו? Okay. So, today, some people, since there's no obligation to eat meat, but one that wants to be Mekayem, according to those that learn that there is a mitzvah, the Rambam, Bach, others that learn that there is a mitzvah to eat meat, is there a mitzvah to eat dafka basar, bakar, meat? Or you can eat also chicken. That's also a big discussion in the poskim. Not clear whether normally it would have been meat, but could you be yotzeh also with chicken? So if you learn that it's meat that had to be like in the Beit HaMikdash, of course, they would bring meat, they wouldn't bring chicken. So that is what you had to eat. Hamoed also had tshuva on that, is lenient with chicken, especially if a person likes chicken better. Sometimes a person likes chicken much better than meat. Sometimes he can't tolerate so much the meat. It's very fatty. So you'd rather eat chicken. So then it would be fine. Let's read those halachot and we'll see what else is relevant over here. Says the Shulchan Aruch in Ilchot Yom Tov, we already explained that Chol Hamoed is somewhere in between Yom Tov and Yom Chol. So he says, we spoke about yourself, how to make yourself happy. You dress up for Kavod Yom Tov. You go to shul and you read Mikra'ei Kodesh, you read the psukim of the Torah to honor the Yom Tov. You eat achila v'shtiya on Chol Hamoed. Don't treat it like a regular day. Don't go to work. Or if you do go to work, it has to be with the guidelines of what Chazal permitted. But that's taking care of yourself. What about taking care of your family? Is that your obligation, or maybe it's their obligation? Each person has his own obligation to take care of his own mitzvot. Whose obligation it is to pray every morning? Is it your obligation to make sure that your wife prays? No, you don't have such an obligation. You have to make sure that you pray. Maybe make sure that your children pray, but it's also midin chinuch. What about making your family happy, making them rejoice on Yom Tov, and on the same token on Chol Hamoed? Over here we found a special thing, that it's your obligation to make sure that your family is happy. And this is how the Shulchan Aruch writes in Siman Tafkuf Kaf Tet, Chayav Adam liot sameach v'tov lev b'moed. We already explained that. Hu v'ishto uvanav v'chol hanilvim elav. The Torah says that the simcha is ata ubincha uvidcha ve'avdecha ve'amatecha, which means everybody must be under your responsibility. You have to make sure, it's a mitzvah taseh min Torah, to make sure that all these people are happy. Because when it says v'samachta b'chagecha, we already explained that the psukim refer not only to you, but the psukim specifically point out that you have to make sure that they are happy as well, not only you. And therefore, how do you make those people happy? Says the Shulchan Aruch, Ketzad mesamcham, haktanim noten lahem kloyot ve'egozim, peanuts, walnuts, whatever it is. Now, obviously, this was in their time. In their time, this is what would make a kid happy. Today,
candies.
Even candies don't make kids happy anymore. I don't know what makes kids happy today, but at least candies. Like this is like if you don't give them candies on a regular basis, people eat today like candies for lunch and dinner. But if you don't, I guess those things will make them happy. I would say, if possible, don't train kids to eat anything sugary. Sugar is the worst killer in the world. Worst killer. It's worse than anything else. So it's best if they don't have to eat those sugary things, and you give them something else. But You have to find things that really makes your kids happy. כיצד משמחם הקטנים נותן להם כליות ואגוזים. הנשים, women, קונה להם בגדים ותכשיטים כפי ממונו. You have to buy your wife a gift according to your ability. כפי ממונו. Which means, Rabbeinu over here that makes a lot of money has to buy something much greater than I would. So, Amen. So, you have to know that there's such an obligation. It's mitzvah min Torah, because the Torah says that halevi ve'ager ve'ayatom. The Torah says, ata uvanecha uvitcha ve'ishtecha. The Torah points out all those in the list. It's your obligation to make them happy. How do you make your wife happy? It says over here, koneh lahem bgadim ve'tachshitim. That's what makes women happy. We don't understand this. I buy shoes, new shoes, I'm not happy. I have new shoes. I'm maybe more comfortable, less comfortable. I have to buy shoes. What should I do? I need to buy a new suit. I buy a new suit. I become happy. If you are happy, you make, by the way, bracha shehecheyanu. You're really not happy. You're buying something that you have no feeling. Maybe you don't need to say shehecheyanu. Shehecheyanu is for simchat halev. So people do feel somewhat happy when they buy a new suit, something new. Okay, good. For shoes you don't make shehecheyanu. Because shoes, the Rama says, that come from leather, if there are leather shoes, and they come from shechting an animal, killing an animal, so for that you don't say shehecheyanu. Good, but we are, our happiness is limited with new clothing. A woman, that's what makes her happy. Why do you think women closets are full of clothing? Makes them happy. We have one suit, or two suits, two pants, two shoes, and we're good. But they don't. They need a hope that makes them happy. So if it makes them happy, you're obligated to make them happy on Yom Tov. Therefore, you go before Yom Tov and you buy them something new. If you can't go, you're too busy, or many people also don't know how to buy. You go to the store. How do you know what to buy? Like you don't know what she likes. She has to try it on. Women try on. A few things until they decide that it fits good and it looks good. So you can't do that. So if you can't do that, give her the money and let her buy. Sometimes the woman is the one that makes the money in the house. The man has less money. So what do you do then? Still give her money, because that makes her happy when you buy her things. So you give her. On Chol Hamoed, normally, we explained yesterday, a person can't go shopping on Chol Hamoed. Shopping for things you don't need for the Chag, you're not allowed to go. It's Isur Schora B'Chol HaMoed. You're not allowed to go. You know what? It's a chance now. I have few days finally that I don't work. I work throughout the whole year, 6 days a week. So Chol HaMoed, I have 3-4 days off. Let me take her to the mall. Let me go to the mall. I'll buy new things for the house. I'll buy a couch. I'll buy a closet. I'll buy this. I'll go to. You can't buy it on Chol HaMoed. You're not allowed to buy things on Chol HaMoed unless you need them for the Chag. You don't need them for the Chag, no. But when you buy clothing,
What if you don't need them, but
you're not allowed. If you use them because you use them for the Chag, yes. But if it's not for the Chag at all, there's no purpose for it.
You buy a
But
shirt and a suit and wear it on the Chag?
yes, you could if you're going to wear it. Yes. If you buying it for the Chag, yes. For the purpose of the Chag, yes. For the honor of the Chag, yes. But when you're buying for your wife something, that is for Chol HaMoed. That is for the Chag. Because Anashim, how do you make them happy? Nashim koneh lahem bgadim v'tachshitim kefi mamono. That's what it is. Says the Biur Halacha. Ve'im en yado maseget. You can't buy them. It's not, you can't afford buying a lot of things or big things. So what do you do then? יקנה להם לכל הפחות מנהלים חדשים לכבוד יום טוב. At least buy them shoes. Now obviously the Biur Halacha time shoes didn't cost much. He didn't know that today shoes would cost an arm and a leg. Sometimes shoes cost much more than the clothing. But he says at least that everybody can afford. Buying shoes is not such an expensive thing. Yeah.
Is there a loophole for purchasing things online? There's very little tircha involved with going online,
right,
finding an item that you want, clicking, and have a nice day.
Right. So the Isur Schora on Yom Tov is nothing to do with tircha. There are those things that are Asur Mishum Tircha. But whatever the Chachamim restricted, it's just like Shabbat. Things that don't have to do with tircha. On the contrary, on Shabbat you're allowed to be toreach, but you're not allowed to do melacha. Even tircha is always limited, especially when we're dealing on Chol HaMoed. Tircha, you should not do. I'll give you an example. It says, it's a common thing. A person garbage pickup is twice a week normally in New York, and it falls down in Chol HaMoed, the day of Chol HaMoed. Can you take that out your garbage? So the Shulchan Aruch writes that you're not allowed to take out the garbage if there's a lot of garbage. If mefanim et hazevel, which means it used to be collected as they did in back in the time, or maybe still they do that in places that they put all the garbage of all the neighbors, let's say, in one place, and then you have piles and piles of garbage, and the person that comes to collect takes them. Or if you yourself have piles and piles of garbage, and then you have to put them out, then it's a problem. But normally, every family has few cans of garbage which they can easily take out, and that is permitted. But it is true, something that has to do with much tircha, even removal of a garbage, would be restricted. For example, if you have to clean your leaves in order to throw them out. So that takes time. You have to clean your leaves from the big backyard, front yard, driveway. It's a lot of work. Such a thing, again, if there's a lot of leaves, such a thing one should not do.
Is the monthly gardener allowed to come on Chol HaMoed to your gardener?
He's allowed to come on Chol HaMoed because you didn't invite him for Chol HaMoed. So whenever somebody like that comes on a monthly basis, or he comes on whenever it's good for him. He decides when it's a good day. You didn't care he should come today or tomorrow. So because of that, we permit him to come and do his work. Okay? So we learned over here, any other questions? Yeah, so we learned over here that one has to take care of his family. But it's not only his family, because it says also, חייב להאכיל לגר ליתום ולאלמנה עם שאר עניים. Person must take care of ger, yatom, ושאר עניים. As it says in the pasuk, והלוי, והגור, והיתום. And then the Rambam writes, very scary words I like to mention. אבל מי שנועל דלתי חצרו, if you lock the gates of the doors, the gates to the front yard, and therefore no guest can come in. ואוכל ושותה, הוא ובניו ואשתו, and he eats and drinks and rejoices on a holiday, he himself and his children and his wife. ואינו מאכיל ומשקה לעניהם ולמרי נפש, he does not give any food to the poor. אין זו שמחת מצווה אלא שמחת קריסו. By the way, the Rambam says לעניים ולמרי נפש. One category is עניים, poor, and second is marei nefesh. Today, time and age, we live in a prosperous generation. There's hardly any aniyim in here. In Eretz Yisrael, there's a lot of aniyim. In America, there's shefa, wealth. It's a wealthy country, and it pours out to everybody. And nobody's hungry in America. But, unfortunately, marei nefesh, you have endless. Marei nefesh means people that are sad, depressed, because people go through life challenges. They are packed with sorrows and pain. And therefore, marei nefesh need also support. So a person needs to know and remember there's aniyim and there's marei nefesh. But a person that locks his gates and doesn't take care of anybody who's poor, or he's depressed, is under all kind of stressful stories, and the simchat mitzvah ela simchat kriso. Unbelievable words from the Rambam. This is not a happiness of the mitzvah, rejoicing with Hashem, rejoicing with the mitzvah, but rather you're rejoicing with your stomach. Remember that when you eat, we all busy with eating in order to fill up our stomach. We are very happy to fill up the stomach. Remember that the purpose on Yom Tov is not to fill up your stomach, or Chol HaMoed. The purpose is to rejoice with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this is only a hechetimtze to rejoice with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because en simcha ela basar v'yayin. A person brings himself to happiness when he's doing that. And happiness is the ultimate goal, to be connected with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Person needs to be b'simcha on Yom Tov. But if you are doing it, and you're doing it only this way without taking care of others that don't have the ability, you're showing and expressing that you only care about your stomach, not about HaKadosh Baruch Hu at all. Not about connecting with HaKadosh Baruch Hu at all. Because if you would, you make sure that others are happy as well. ועל אלו נאמר, on those people it says in the pasuk, זבחיהם כלחם עונים. זבחיהם כלחם עונים להם, כל אוכליו יטמאו, כי לחמם לנפשם טמא הוא. Scary words. This bread is טמא, is כל אוכליו יטמאו, it makes you טמא. Instead of being מקדש you, lifting you to much higher level, it's טמא. שמחה כזו, says the Rambam, קלון הוא להם. It's disgraceful. It's disgusting. This is not an honorable simcha. This is not an honorable Yom Tov meal. It's a disgusting Yom Tov meal, says Rambam. שנאמר, וזרעתי פרש על פניכם, פרש חגיכם. The Zohar also brings the same thing. And he says that מי שאינו נותן לעני מסעודתו ביום טוב רחמנא ליצלן, terrible, terrible things, the Zohar writes. And therefore, because of that, if a person is not able to invite guests for Yom Tov, at least remember, what the very first halacha on Hilchot Pesach is what? The Rema brings down the very first halacha when you open Hilchot Pesach, minhag liknot chitin lechalkam la'aniyim letzorech Pesach. The minhag is to give money for Maot Chitim. So people would have, poor people would have money to buy the matzot for Pesach and to buy bread to buy food for Pesach. And this mitzvah, you force on it. It's not only a minhag that if a person wants to do it, doesn't want to do. If you live in a city, you are obligated to be mishtatef, to join the expense of taking care of the poor people. And this is how the Shulchan Aruch starts Hilchot Pesach, and the way he ends Hilchot Yom Tov is that a person must take care of the poor as well. חייב להאכיל לגר ליתום ולאלמנה עם שאר עניים. So therefore remember the next halacha that the Shulchan Aruch writes again from the Rambam. אדם אוכל ושותה ושמח ברגל. Person should be happy while he's drinking and eating and rejoicing. But לא ימשוך בבשר וביין ובשחות וקלות ראש. A person should not make the mistake we spoke before. It's not about your happiness. It's not a party. It's not a party of holelut. You're not going to dance in a party and forget about everything. No, לא ימשוך בבשר ויין. People feel that you have a mitzvah to eat wine, to eat meat, to drink wine. Yalla. Bring as much as possible, drink as much as possible, get drunk, be happy, all the way, take it all the way. No. לפי שאין השחוק וקלות ראש שמחה, אלא הוללות ושכלות. ולא נצטווינו על הוללות והשכלות, אלא על שמחה שיש בה עבודת היוצר. A person is obligated to have שמחה on Yom Tov. What kind? שיש בה עבודת היוצר, that connects with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that uplifts you spiritually. And so much so that it ends up and says the following, the Rambam, חייבים בית דין להעמיד שוטרים ברגלים שיהיו משוטטים ומחפשים בגנות ובפרדסים ועל הנהרות. בית דין are obligated. בית דין are those that are in charge. They're obligated to enforce those following things by policemen, which means בית דין should enforce, should appoint policemen which will enforce the following. שיהיו משוטטים, they go searching on the gardens, בפרדסים ועל נהרות, שלא יתקבצו שם לאכול ולשתות אנשים ונשים ויבואו לידי עבירה. You see over there sometimes men and women eating together. That's not permitted. You have to enforce it. ויזהירו בדבר זה לכל העם. You have to warn everybody. שלא יתערבו אנשים ונשים בבתיהם בשמחה. Sometimes people come together, like in events, hotels, or even in a house, few families. So you have to know the guideline. A husband stays with his wife. Not that all of a sudden you see this husband speaks to the other one's wife, and this wife speaks to this husband, or one wife sits together with few husbands and they joke together. That's not permitted, that's asur. ולא ימשכו ביין שמא יבואו לידי עבירה, אלא יהיו כולם קדושים. By the way, the Ashkenazim, after holidays, after Sukkot and after Pesach, they do Bahab. Bahab, Monday, Thursday, Monday, fast. Why? This is the reason. And by Yov, it says in the beginning of the Sefer, how he made sure to make, he took the extra caution that his children would not sin by on the holidays and do all those things that we over here warned about. ומנהג חסידים, says the Tur, אשר השם לנגדם תמיד, בכל דרכיהם ידעו, בעת שמחתם, אז יותר ויותר משבחים לקדוש ברוך הוא אשר שמחם. Which means, what is the right, correct way? Is to elevate yourself and realize that a Kadosh Baruch Hu is the one that makes you happy. When a Kadosh Baruch Hu makes you happy, you have to thank him. Masha. הגיע הזמן?
10 minutes after 7.
Right, so we have 5 more minutes. So what does he say over here, the tool? Who makes you happy? Who makes you happy? Who really makes you happy? You are obligated to make those people that we said before happy. Your children, your wife, the poor. But in the end of the day, who makes you happy? We go through so much challenges in life. But who makes you happy? Who goes and uplifts you and takes you out of all the problems that one has in his life, his sorrows, who brings you higher? That's a Kadosh Baruch Hu. So therefore you have to make sure that this is the chance to thank a Kadosh Baruch Hu for those things. And he says over here, Be'et simchatam, when you are happy, when you are drinking a little bit, not too much, lo yimashech. Drinking, eating, בעת שמחתם אז יותר ויותר משבחים לקדוש ברוך הוא אשר שמחם. This is the time when he uplifts you, the wine and the meat that you are obligated to eat in order to feel the simcha. That is the chance and the time to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu that brought you to that level. Any questions on what we learned today? כבוד הרב, מה השאלה? חזק ואמץ, חזק ואמץ.